The bullpen went dead silent the second I stepped through the doors with my girlfriend's hand firmly in mine. My colleagues, the same men and women I'd backed up on countless midnight calls, stared at me like I just confessed to murder instead of finally telling the truth about who I loved. I was Detective Alina Thompson, 34 years old with 8 years on the force, and for the first time in my life I refused to shrink. Valerie stood beside me, tall and composed in her charcoal suit, her fingers steady against mine even though I could feel the tremor she tried to hide. She had begged me not to do this, not here, not now, but I was done living as half a person just to keep the peace in a building that pretended tolerance while enforcing silence. Captain Ruiz cleared his throat from the doorway, his face already flushed. "Thompson, my office now." The walk across the room felt endless, boots squeaking on the linoleum, every head turning away as if eye contact might contaminate them. Mike Donnelly, my usual partner for 3 years, suddenly found his coffee mug fascinating. Sarah Lopez, who had cried on my shoulder after her divorce last summer, busied herself with paperwork like it was the most urgent case in Chicago. I squeezed Valerie's hand once before letting go, knowing she couldn't follow me upstairs without raising questions that could end her career as deputy chief. That was the deal we had made 5 years ago when we said I do in a tiny courthouse in Michigan, keep the marriage secret, protect her, climb up the ladder while I stayed the street detective who never rocked the boat. Until today. In Ruiz's office, the door clicked shut like a gunshot. "What the hell was that performance, Thompson?" he snapped. "You think bringing your girlfriend in here like it's show and tell is going to help your career?" I met his eyes straight on. "She's not just my girlfriend, Captain. She's the woman I love, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise." He leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Look, the department has policies, but you know how it is. Guys talk. Cases get reassigned. Backup gets slow. You just painted a target on your own back." I left his office with a new assignment: solo surveillance on a low-priority warehouse case that no one else wanted. By lunch, the whispers had started. No one sat at my usual table in the break room. When I reached for the coffee pot, Donnelly moved it just out of reach without a word. The isolation settled over me like a cold, wet coat I couldn't shake. That night in our apartment in Lincoln Park, Valerie paced the living room, still in her suit jacket. "Alina, you promised." "We agreed the marriage stays private because my position." Her voice cracked. "I could lose everything if they connect us now." I stood by the window watching the city lights blur. "And what about me, Val? Every time I lie about us, it chips away at who I am. I can't keep smiling through the jokes about my non-existent boyfriend. I can't keep changing pronouns in stories. Today I chose us out loud, and if that costs me friends, so be it." She stopped pacing and pulled me into her arms, her perfume the same one she'd worn on our first date wrapping around me like safety. But even in that moment I felt the distance she was already building to protect herself. We made love quietly, fiercely, knowing tomorrow the Real storm would hit. I fell asleep with her heartbeat under my cheek, wondering how long love could survive when one of us was willing to hide and the other refused to anymore. The next morning at roll call, the seating chart had changed. My desk was moved to the corner near the evidence locker, where no one passed by unless they had to. Assignments came in on paper instead of the usual banter. I worked the warehouse case alone, tailing a suspect through freezing rain for 6 hours with no backup when he got spooked. When I radioed for assistance, the response was static, then silence. I made the arrest anyway, tackled him myself in an alley, and drove him in with blood on my knuckles from his resistance. Back at the precinct, no one clapped, no one even looked up. Ruiz just nodded and said good work, like he was reading from a script. That night my mother called from Florida, her voice tight with disappointment. "Your father saw the photo you posted, Alina. We didn't raise you to throw your life away on some phase." I hung up before the tears came. Valerie was at a late meeting, or so she said. I sat alone at our kitchen table eating cold takeout, realizing the price of my honesty had just begun to be collected. And the collector was everyone I once called family, including the woman sleeping beside me who still couldn't say my name in public without lowering her voice. By the end of the first week, the isolation had teeth. Partners who once fought to ride with me now suddenly had prior commitments. When I needed backup on even routine traffic stops, I started carrying an extra magazine and checking my rearview mirror more than usual because the streets hadn't changed, but the people watching my back had. Donnelly cornered me in the locker room after shift, his face twisted with something between pity and disgust. "Look, Thompson, I don't care what you do at home, but bringing it here? You're making the whole squad look bad." How am I supposed to trust you to have my six when you're distracted by your girlfriend? I stepped closer until our chests almost touched. The only distraction I see is you worrying more about my bedroom than the gangbangers selling fentanyl 2 blocks from your kid's school, Mike. You want to talk trust? Let's talk about the time I took a bullet for you in 22. He slammed his locker and walked out. The echo followed me for days. Valerie and I argued every night now in whispers so the neighbors wouldn't hear. You have to give them time, Alina, she said, folding laundry with mechanical precision. This isn't Seattle, this is Chicago PD. Change comes slow. I watched her hands, the same hands that had slid a gold band on my finger in secret 5 years ago. Time is what they want, Val. Time for me to quit or transfer or go back in the closet, so they can pretend I'm the same old Alina. But I'm not, and neither are you. She didn't answer, just pressed her lips together the way she did when a decision had already been made upstairs. Later when we lay in bed she reached for me, but I turned away, not because I didn't want her but because wanting her while she stayed silent felt like another kind of betrayal. The next morning she left before dawn, her deputy chief badge glinting on the dresser, like a reminder of the wall between us. The warehouse case led nowhere, but it gave me time to think. I started staying late running cold cases no one cared about anymore just to avoid the empty bullpen. One night Sergeant Lopez, the same woman who'd once shared her lunch with me, found me at my desk at midnight. You don't have to do this alone, Alina, she whispered, checking the hallway first. Some of us. We're not all like them. For a second hope flared, then she added, but I can't be seen talking to you too much. My husband works narcotics. She slipped me a coffee and left. The small kindness hurt worse than the open hostility. At home Valerie had cooked my favorite risotto, but the table was set for one. Emergency briefing, her note said. I ate standing up, staring at the empty chair, and realized the woman who signed off on every major operation in the city was choosing briefings over her wife because the precinct had drawn a line and she was staying on the safe side. My father called next, his voice booming through the speakerphone. Your mother is crying, Alina. People at church are asking questions. Fix this before it destroys our family. I laughed bitterly. Destroy the family? Dad, I've been destroyed every day I hid who I am for you. Valerie is my family now, whether you like it or not. He hung up. That was the night I found the first anonymous note in my locker. Dykes don't belong in uniform. I crumpled it and kept working because stopping meant they won. Valerie came home late again, and when I showed her the note, she read it twice, then folded it neatly like evidence. I'll look into it, she said, but her eyes said otherwise. She was protecting her position the same way she protected mine, by staying invisible. I went to sleep on the couch for the first time in our marriage, wondering how much longer I could pay the price of loving a woman who loved her badge more. The big case dropped on a Tuesday morning like a grenade with the pin already pulled. A string of brutal home invasions targeting prominent LGBTQ business owners across the North Side, 4 victims in 2 weeks, all beaten, left for dead with slurs carved into their walls. The brass called it Priority 1, but the assignment sheet had my name alone in bold. No partner, no task force, just Detective Thompson handle it. Ruiz dropped the file on my desk without meeting my eyes. You wanted visibility, Thompson. Here's your spotlight. I scanned the photos, blood on Persian rugs, designer suits ripped open, and felt the familiar burn of purpose cut through the exhaustion. This wasn't just a case, it was personal. I worked it like a woman possessed, pulling 16-hour days, chasing leads through underground bars and private clubs, where people whispered my name now for different reasons. Valerie watched from afar, sending encrypted texts at 3 a.m. Be careful. I love you. But never once did she offer departmental resources, or even a quiet word to Ruiz. I interviewed the first victim, a club owner named Marcus, whose face was still swollen. They knew my routine, detective, he rasped. Someone on the inside is feeding them. His words stuck with me. I started cross-referencing dispatch logs and found patterns, small inconsistencies in patrol routes near each scene. The deeper I dug, the more it smelled like someone with access, someone wearing the same badge I did. One night, I tailed a suspect, a low-level dealer named Rico, through an abandoned meatpacking plant on the south side. Rain hammered the tin roof, and my flashlight beam caught movement just before the shot rang out. I dove behind a rusted conveyor belt, heart slamming as bullets sparked off metal. No backup came when I called it in, only static. I returned fire, counted rounds, and charged when the shooting stopped, tackling Rico in the dark. He fought like a cornered animal, but I cuffed him anyway, blood trickling from a graze on my arm. Driving back to the precinct with him in the cage, I caught my reflection in the rearview, eyes wild and alive for the first time since coming out. At booking, Donnelly was the desk sergeant. He processed Rico without a word to me, but I saw the flicker of respect he couldn't quite hide. Small victories. Valerie was waiting when I finally stumbled home at dawn, stitches fresh on my arm. She took one look at the bandage and pulled me into the shower, clothes and all. "You could have died tonight," she whispered against my wet hair. "And you would have signed the report without ever admitting I'm your wife," I answered. The water hid my tears. We didn't fight that night, we just held each other, knowing the case was bigger than us now, and the price was climbing higher than either of us had budgeted. The next morning another note waited in my locker, this one with a photo of Valerie and me from last year's Christmas party someone had dug up. The message was simple. "We know." I burned it in the station trash can and kept moving because stopping now wasn't an option. The case had me and I had the case, and somewhere in the middle my marriage was bleeding out one silent day at a time. The breakthrough came at 2 a.m. in a dimly lit coffee shop on Halstead when a confidential informant slid a USB drive across the table. "Internal Affairs has been watching this for months," he muttered. "But someone upstairs keeps burying it." The files showed everything: patrol logs, altered bodycam footage missing, and a lieutenant named Graves funneling information to the invaders for kickbacks. Graves, the same man who'd laughed loudest at the dyke jokes in the locker room. I sat there in the fluorescent glow, realizing the betrayal ran deeper than homophobia. It was corruption wearing prejudice as a mask. I copied everything and drove straight to the one person I still trusted with my life, even if she couldn't trust me with hers in public: Valerie. She met me at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts, her civilian clothes making her look almost ordinary. I slid the drive across the Formica table. "It's Graves, Val. He's selling us out." Her face went pale as she scanned the documents on her laptop. "This goes all the way to the commissioner's office if we move wrong," she said quietly. For a moment I saw the old Valerie, the one who used to plan our future without fear. Then the deputy chief mask slipped back on. "I'll take it to the right people, but you stay out of it, Alina. Your name can't be connected." I slammed my coffee down. "My name is already connected, Val. I'm the dyke detective they isolated, remember? If I don't finish this, they'll say I fabricated it to save my career." We argued in hushed tones until the waitress glared. In the parking lot she kissed me, quick and desperate, before driving away in separate cars. The distance between us had never felt wider. The next 48 hours were a blur of secret meetings and near misses. I confronted a witness who recanted after a visit from Graves' crew. I got jumped in a parking garage, 2 masked men with department-issue boots. But I fought free and got photos. Every step forward cost me something: sleep, friends, the last threads of my marriage. Valerie grew quieter at home, answering work calls at midnight and leaving before I woke. One afternoon my sister texted a screenshot from a private family group chat. "Alina's lifestyle is tearing us apart. Pray for her." I blocked the number and kept working. The case consumed me because it was the only thing that still made sense. Love had become negotiations in parking lots, and loyalty had become a luxury I couldn't afford. Then the raid went down. I led the entry team on Graves' warehouse despite Ruiz trying to sideline me. Shots were fired, Graves went down resisting, and we recovered enough evidence to bury him and 3 others. When the smoke cleared, the captain actually shook my hand in front of the squad. "Hell of a job, Thompson." Donnelly nodded from across the room. Small cracks in the wall, but the wall was still there. That night Valerie came home with champagne, and for 3 hours we pretended everything was normal. She traced the new scar on my arm and whispered, "I'm proud of you," but the words felt rehearsed like a press release. I fell asleep wondering if the woman who had just watched me almost die would ever be willing to stand beside me in daylight, or if the signature she was about to put on my commendation would be the last thing she ever gave me publicly. The commendation recommendation landed on my desk 3 days later, signed by everyone except the one name that mattered: Deputy Chief Valerie Hayes. The ceremony was scheduled for Friday in the main auditorium, brass from downtown, the mayor's office, the works. I stared at the empty line where her signature should be and felt the old anger rise. She had spent the week in meetings avoiding our apartment, And when I finally cornered her in the garage at headquarters, she had the nerve to say, "It's protocol, Alina. I can't appear to show favoritism." I laughed in her face. Favoritism? Val, you've shown me exactly zero favor since the day I came out. You let them isolate me, you let them threaten me, and now you won't even sign the paper that says I did something right. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. If I sign it and they find out about us, everything we've built collapses. I walked away before I said something unforgivable. The morning of the ceremony, I stood in front of our closet choosing between dress uniform and civilian suit. Valerie had left at dawn again. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "We saw the news. Please reconsider this life." I deleted it and pinned on my badge. At the auditorium, the seats were packed. Ruiz read the citation praising my dedication despite personal challenges, and the crowd clapped politely. Then the moment came. The commissioner stepped to the podium holding the framed certificate. "This commendation is signed by Deputy Chief Hayes, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, due to scheduling." The room murmured. I accepted the award with a smile that felt like broken glass. Cameras flashed. Donnelly actually clapped this time. But all I could think was that the woman who shared my bed and my last name had chosen absence over acknowledgement one more time. Afterward in the hallway, Graves' former partner cornered me, his breath sour with whiskey. "You think this makes you a hero, Thompson? We know about you and the deputy chief. How long before Internal Affairs gets that photo?" I stepped into his space. "You want to threaten me? Bring it. I've survived worse than you this month." He backed off, but the damage was done. The secret was cracking. That night Valerie finally came home. We sat on opposite ends of the couch like strangers. "I signed it, Alina," she said softly. "I signed it at 6 a.m. before anyone else arrived. It's on record." I looked at her, the woman I had married in secret, the woman who had just saved my career, while destroying what was left of my trust. "You signed it in the dark, Val. Just like everything else." She reached for my hand, but I stood up. "I don't know how much more of this I can take." For the first time since we met, she didn't have an answer. The fallout hit like a freight train the following Monday. Someone leaked the old Christmas party photo to the internal rumor mill, and by noon the entire department knew Deputy Chief Hayes was married to Detective Thompson. Ruiz called me in first, his face pale. "Is this true?" I nodded. 5 years married. She's my wife, not my girlfriend." He rubbed his face. "Jesus, Alina, you just made my life hell." Internal Affairs opened an inquiry. Nepotism, conflict of interest, the works. Valerie was placed on administrative leave pending review. I was offered a transfer to a suburban district, quiet desk work if I wanted it. The isolation I'd felt before was nothing compared to the open stares, now pity mixed with satisfaction from the same people who'd shunned me. Valerie waited for me at home, bags already packed by the door. "I resigned this morning," she said calmly. "Effective immediately. No pension fight, no scandal dragging on." I stared at the woman who had built her entire identity around the badge. "Why now?" She smiled sadly. "Because watching you almost die on that raid made me realize I'd rather lose the job than lose you completely. I was wrong, Alina. I chose safety over us, and it almost killed what we had." We talked for hours that night, really talked about the family pressure, the department culture, the fear that had kept us hidden. For the first time she said my name out loud in a voice that didn't whisper. I forgave her, not because it was easy, but because love that survives this much deserves a second chance. 2 months later I stood in the same auditorium, this time as a training officer for new recruits. Valerie sat in the front row, openly wearing her wedding band, the gold catching the light. The whispers still happened, but fewer now. Some officers even nodded at us in the hallway. My mother sent a tentative text last week asking for coffee. Small steps. The big case was closed. Graves and his crew were doing 20 to life, and the city felt a little safer. But every night when Valerie and I locked the door, and finally breathed the same air, without looking over our shoulders, I remember the cost, the friendships lost, the families strained, the nights I slept alone on the couch. We paid in full. Was it worth it, forcing the truth into the light, even when it nearly destroyed everything? Or should I have kept our love hidden the way my wife once begged me to?